Hey, welcome to Blank Bodies, Vampire the Masquerade, tabletop and horror podcast. I'm Hunter, and I'm joined today by a very special guest today. We have Jeff, the creator of The Crypt Is Open.
Thanks for having me. This is not something I expected when I started writing this. So this is a really cool experience.
Yeah, so I actually found The Crypt Is Open through the itch.io trans rights in Texas bundle they're doing right now. And I believe when this comes out, it'll be open for another 2 weeks. So if you haven't checked that out, definitely.
Please do. They're trying to hit 420,000. And I tell people, it's like, look, when we all jumped in on this, it was set at 5K. That was the goal, 5K. And the fact that their last I checked was like 360 is just incredible. And
Yeah.
I cannot believe how successful it's been. And I'm super excited when the organizations get their donations, because that's just gonna be here you go.
Yeah, because I
It's gonna be
think
great for them.
Yeah, I think when I found it, it was pretty early. I think they were already at like 4 point something K within like a day or two, it
Oh
seemed
yeah.
like.
It just blasted. It just skyrocketed. It was great. It was great to watch. Every couple hours to my fiance, I'd just be like, 10. I just yell out numbers at her. She would be like, wait, what are you talking about? Oh, right, okay. That was very cool.
Yeah, so you, like I said, you're the creator of The Crypt, or The Crypt Has Opened.
The Crypt Has Opened.
You want to give us kind of like your entry pitch for that? Like, how would
Yeah,
you tell someone who's never heard of it before what it's about?
absolutely. So The Crypt Has Opened is essentially that the apocalypse came not with a scream, but with the exhalation of a crypt door. And essentially, the thing called the crypt has this, either a force or an entity or something has invaded Earth, and all of these crypt doors have opened up, allowing zombies out and vampires. Your cryptids that you've always read about now are in force and in mass and just begin to take over Earth. And it's just a devastating time until people begin to realize that the old world magic has really began to manifest itself in very real and powerful ways. And now practitioners of magic have come forth and are now battling against the crypt. And you are part of the practitioners who are pushing back against the crypt and trying to, what we say, reclaim the dead spaces of the world. So if you're familiar, this is one I use all the time. If you're familiar with The Stand, Stephen King's The Stand, where you have a lot of these just like ghost towns and little pockets of communities here and there, you are these pockets of communities that are trying to, reclaim the world. And it's set in kind of a early 90s, mid 90s aesthetic. So Jinko jeans and your Walkmans, bring them if you got them, because they're there, and you're just kind of using your various traditions to play in this game where you actually can build your own town. That's actually part of the development, not just building your character, but as a group, you build your own town. We have
Yeah,
rules for that.
I saw that when I was reading through the, I believe this is the second 2.0
Yes.
that's up right now.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was a really interesting mechanic. So you have all the players come together and they build their hometown that they're kind of defending from these cryptids that are crawling out of the crypt.
Yeah. And I tell anybody who'll ask, it's straight stolen from Kids on Brooms. You build the school, and I just really liked that idea. I've been playing a lot of games recently, and I like a lot of games where I see that as a mechanic where you're, as a table, before the game even begins, you've already established either player connections, which we have in The Crypt Is Open. You also build PC connections before the game even starts, as well as some kind of central idea or concept or something to kind of everybody can, a cornerstone probably be a great word to use there, for everybody to hook into before the adventure begins, and gives them something to kind of already be invested into the game prior to jumping in. And in for The Crypt Is Opened, a town for this theme is perfect for that. Here's your small town or your big city. How, you all decide the population and what it does and what it's focused on. And you can just start right off. We all know what we're doing. We're defending our town. We kind of get past that. Oh, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. Like, gee, I hope we pick up on the GM's plot hooks and and get the game going. It's ready right off the bat. So that's kind of why I wanted to place that in there.
Yeah, I like that. I like that giving players motivation outside of, oh, you're all at a tavern, someone's hiring people, or
Right.
oh, an event happened in front of you, you better be invested in this immediately.
Or there's always that, because me as a player, I'll contrive a reason why my character will be invested, because I know, listen, that's why we're here at the table. That's the social contract that we've all agreed to, is we've all sat at this table to not follow this story, but at least be invested in what the GM has spent their time doing, and let's work as a group for this cooperative storytelling. And so I'll do that, but it makes it much easier when you don't have to be so contrived with your
Yeah.
reasonings.
I've always been maybe a little lazy, but I always tend to give my players like at least a common job. It's like, oh, you're all working on this like wagon train going across this area of the Dungeons and Dragons world, or like, oh, you're all working on this ship. So
that's definitely what I've started doing as well in games, based on playing all these other games. It always comes back to, it's like, well, when I'm running D&D, I take all these concepts and haul it back to this and go, okay, we all need to come up with why we're a party to begin with, and why we're doing this, and why are we here. And it just gets past a lot of the weirdness and trying to figure it all out at the table.
So another thing that I thought was really interesting was the character creation system. I know this is based on Blades in the Dark.
Yes.
But it looks like it's a combination of the magical tradition they ascribe to, the like a stereotype or trope background, and then a path of magic as well. So it's kind of a three-prong decision choice.
Exactly. So on the outset, as I started writing this, I realized I'll tell people I am not a practitioner of any kind of real world magical traditions, Wiccan and whatever and what have you. So when I came to approach this game, I was like, well, I don't want to make up traditions or write what I think these traditions should be. What I decided to do was make very broad umbrella traditions. So things that are fairly universal. So that way you have the nature tradition, which can cover a lot of real world traditions. There's a lot of different, in the West and the East that would consider themselves natural practitioners of magic. There are the magic school, tradition. There is the hierarchical tradition, which covers your business leaders and as well as your kind of your Judeo-Christian religions, because they're very hierarchical in their structure. And what that allows you to do as a player is find that tradition that kind of resonates with you and then write your own tradition into that. And what are the specifics and how does that manifest for your character? But you kind of fit within that tradition. So that means any two characters from the same tradition are going to be completely different, because it's up to the player to decide how that manifests. And it does come with some mechanical and role play benefits for when you're within those moments. So it's just not like a completely arbitrary, just like whatever. So there's a little bit that comes with that. And then you choose your trope. Your trope is like your playbook, I would say. It's kind of like your class type of thing. We have the backpack, which is your standard kind of healer. It's the backpack healer. The cellar dweller is your ritual caster, the person that primarily wants to be in their lab tinkering with stuff rather than necessarily going out. I like the crypt hunter, which is specifically, these are the people that go out to hunt for crypt doors and shut them down. And these tropes are in world terminology. So people would refer to you as a backpack, would refer to somebody as a cellar dweller. And then the paths of magic, because originally if you look at the first edition of the book, the traditions told you what your primary and secondary paths of magic were, which there are 5. There's ceremonial creation, crypt, folk, and hex magic. Those are the 5 paths of magic. And originally it told you what your primary and your secondary were, depending on your tradition. And I realized that still kind of gets back to me ascribing what I think these traditions are. And I felt it kind of started limiting people in what tradition they may want to pick. So something may resonate with them on a personal level, but then they look at what the magical paths are and they go, well, that doesn't quite fit what I want. So we separated those out. You get to choose which of the 2 traditions which of the 2 paths of magic are your basically your primary, your secondary paths that you start a little bit more powerful at, to kind of show your background and your history. In fact, even in the text, it says a lot of practitioners break away from tradition. So while we may say in the tradition, this is what the tradition's primarily known for, that doesn't mean you have to go with that.
Okay.
It's just kind of a in-world kind of nudge. Hey, this is to kind of help you on your way. If you're not sure what you want to do, probably choose these 2 and it'll match with your tradition. If not, that's okay.
Yeah.
Quick breakdown there.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like having like at least a couple steps like that. I did play some Blades in the Dark and I really liked it, but having those extra steps to really kind of personalize a character and is really nice, I think.
Yeah, and all my play tests so far, players have loved it. The biggest complaint, I wouldn't say criticism, was, can we just have a quick character build chart? So I built one of those that'll be coming out in the next iteration. It's just a quick, like, listen, if you want to play this, here's where you put your points, go to town.
Yeah. One thing I noticed, and I know it's it starts off with players building a chunk of the world. So the lore, and it's still a beta, so the lore seems a little more light.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually didn't realize that you were setting in kind of like a 90s
Mm-hmm.
setting, which is really interesting because reading through it, I was picturing almost more of like a Hammer horror kind
Okay.
of like more gaslight and
Sure.
but
And so the way I've decided to approach this whole release is, what's out in 2.0 is always going to be free. Basically the SRD, this is the base mechanics. Here's everything you're going to need to run. It'll be updated with this next release. But I have a whole, like, I think it ends at chapter 13. I have chapters 14 through 18 or 19 that are just the world. That's the bestiary. That's all the stuff that's going to get you there. That's going to be held off for because right now, like I said, it's all free. That'll be a paid release, basically. So if you want the lore and the world and all the bestiary, which will also have illustrations and kind of be the more true book form, that I'll, but I don't know how much I'm gonna ask for it, but that I figured that would be worth something. But if you just want the base mechanics to, like you said, well, I want to set it in this gaslight kind of thing, boom, you got it. Like, there's nothing to stop you there. And I would tell people, go for it. That's exactly what you should do. Whatever sparks your interest the most.
yeah. That's cool. So do you have a timeline for when these extra parts might come out?
I wish I did. With a full-time job, a voice acting career on the side, and a 2-year-old, I write it when I can.
Fair.
So it's what I've done right now is I've gone back through. I'm actually in the midst of editing everything I have now and fleshing a lot out, because if there's a couple of parts within the Paths of Magic where the rules are a little too light for my taste. While this is a, like Blades in the Dark, narrative first, story driven type of game. It's a game where instead of in this case, we call it the Crypt Keeper as the GM, the Crypt Keeper. Instead of them telling the practitioners or the players, give me this kind of role based on what you're wanting to do, it's a conversation. The player can tell the Crypt Keeper, this is what I want to achieve, and these are the paths of magic I'm going to use to achieve that goal. And then the crypt keeper in turn will be like, well, here's how difficult I think that would be based on what you're telling me. Do you agree with that? Do you think that sounds reasonable? And most of the time I play test, most players be like, yeah, that sounds right. Because, I'll give my justification as to why I think that's probably going to be as difficult as it's going to be. And if not, it should be an open dialogue to find that narrative flow. And it's something, again, I've pulled back into other games. I've really stopped trying to necessarily say, here's what you need to do for me. Well, tell me what you're going to do to get there. And let's determine how what will mean for the story. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I'm a huge like Ravenloft fan. Played it like second edition, third edition, but one thing I noticed in like a lot of that old D&D stuff, especially, is like everything was a chart, including like, oh, you're trying to cast a spell in Ravenloft. Well, how many people are watching that you get this negative? And there's like a preset like chart of like 100 numbers you have to go
Yeah.
through and check every
Roll,
time
kind of
someone.
roll master type of just like, oh my, why do we have to? Yeah, no, let's just let's get away from that. That's not necessary. And we want to tell a story.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think that's what tabletop gaming is about. We're all here to tell a story. So let's get to it.
Yeah, and I definitely prefer kind of a middle ground. I've something I like about the new edition of Vampire and getting ready to play an Unknown Armies campaign, and it seems like it's very much like that. I like a little bit of crunch to my game. I want
Mhm.
it's the way I want to be told how certain things are going to work, but also
Yes,
you need a dialogue behind it. If we're just going to be playing, you might as well play a video game at that point.
exactly. And I think I'm with you on that. This is why I went back through and I've noticed in playtest players do want as much guidance as possible. In the original edition, and I'm leaving all the old editions up as I write them so people can compare, and they may find that an older 1.0 might be more their speed, because I don't really explain what each this is going to get more into the mechanics of the paths of magic that I named. Of those 5, there are 3 aspects that a practitioner can be more focused on. So I use hex as the best primary because or example, because it's the most kind of D&D-esque in that it's our damage dealing class, right? Or path. It is death magic, curse magic, and protection magic. That is what Hex focuses on. So if you want to be all about just I'm slinging fireballs, then you want death mat. Like that's the aspect that you're going to be focused in to do that the best, do it better than anybody else. If you want to be curses, I want my stuff to linger, last a long time. The dots, these are my damage over time stuff. Or it's going to pop off later. All right, that's when you want to get into your curse magic. Then the protection magic is, how do I protect against curses? How do I protect against? Because on the same side, I don't want this stuff hitting me. I know how bad it is. I want to be able to protect myself against it. Or in general, I know how bad it is. I don't deal in death. I don't deal in curses, but I want to protect people from it, or I want to protect myself from it. So I was on a roll about that for a reason. So you have all those aspects. So originally, I didn't give a description as to what the hex path does, like a general, like this is what it's about. I only described the 3 aspects and what they do, but not a general overview of the path itself. So in the second edition, due to some player feedback, it was like, here, in case you want to do something, because the way the Crypt Has Opened works, I want players to feel as open as possible to try any magical idea they can come up with. Unlike a lot of games where it's like, here's the spell that you have. No, you have access to magic. What can you come up with? What is your idea of magic, and how do you want to do this thing? If it's not covered in one of those 3 aspects, you can kind of default then to the overall path. Well, based on what I'm trying to do, this is probably the path of magic I'm trying to use in order to do that. And that sets some of the dice that you'll use to do that. And it does limit some other things. So most of the time the mechanics are trying to push you towards and to use an aspect. That's when you're going to be at your most powerful. But because what I've found is if you're trying to do something super crazy that doesn't fit in an aspect, we want to limit that more because that means you are trying to do like world shattering, world changing type of magic. It probably shouldn't be as easy to do.
Absolutely. I've been looking actually into a lot of different magic systems. I've had a little bit of an idea for a game rattling around in my head. And so, like, just really, I've just been looking at different games and how they handle their magic. And that is a big problem because you end up with like D&D where you have this giant list of things you have to dig through. And even then, one of the biggest complaints I hear about like the newest edition of D&D is there's too many types of wizards and not enough spells for them.
You know, that's what I felt about fourth edition when he really got it down to. I was like, oh, everything at this level does this much damage, or if it doesn't do this much damage, it's because it has these kind of effects. But if you took out all the, if you looked at just raw numbers, you realized everything at this level does one of these three things, regardless of the class. And that's when it really fell apart for me because I was just like, well, does it really matter what I play? Because we're all doing the same thing, essentially, it feels like.
Yeah, and that's tough too, because like you can go in the other direction and try and run a game like Ars Magica or Mage, where you're just like given like vague concepts and then been like, all right, try and do something with these, and we'll figure it out from there.
Yeah, and it puts a lot. I think it puts a lot of work on the GM at that point to adjudicate well how difficult that is. It can feel pretty capricious that some players may feel like, well, you let so and so do like jump a full building and then land without any harm. Why can't I jump from this height and not get hurt? Just off the top of my head, but it can just get really weird if you're not careful. So
yeah, I think, but yeah, it seems like it's in a really fun like middle ground. It's easy to hop into and play without too much like.
I hope so.
Yeah. Well, at least where it is right now, I mean, it looks like the 2.0 is about under 20 pages. Looks right around there.
Yeah.
Not counting like legal and front page
right.
table of contents.
Exactly.
But so it's at least for the core, I think it's pretty nice. All in one spot read. I read it through it again earlier today and I feel like it really clicked.
Cool. And it's the biggest, I'll say the biggest change with 3.0 is I'm moving how the mechanics are displayed a little bit and trying to get them a little bit more in line. I felt like they were a little all over the place. I'm trying to just have a section that's like, here's how the imposition dice system works, and to just go straight through it. Because the old edition, I had mechanics for initiative that I never used at my personal game. And I realized, why am I leaving this mechanic in there if I, as the game writer, don't use it? And so I moved it to an optional mechanic. And so it flows much more like Blades in the Dark in that it's narrative first. It's what are you trying to do? And the consequences of the dice will determine how the enemies essentially get their turn, right? If kind of an example from Blades, if I'm in a knife fight and I go to stab my opponent and I get I think 5 or 6, was it? No, 4 and 5, I think, are a success. Cool, you did it, but there's some consequences. So you got a slice on them, but they were able to get a stab in, right? And so that's the consequence of that roll. So I just kind of kept that rolling with this system, same way. Your consequences of failures and successes, I call it the gravity or the severity of scale, will determine how the bad guys kind of get their turn.
Yeah, that I like that. There's something kind of like that in the new vampire system where, you start rolling your hunger dice and so you get to do the thing, but maybe it makes you also you're a lot more hungry for blood, or you did the thing, but you also alerted the guards next door, or so I really like having a setting or a system, that allows for things other than fail, pass.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did again with this system. It's on a 1 through 3 is just straight failure. 4, 5, and 6 is a success with consequences, and then a 7+ is you get exactly what you're after.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the GM to decide. Well, not entirely. What makes this system a little bit different, very different, I should say, than most is we are using a D4 through a D12, no D20s currently. And whenever you come to a task that you're trying to complete, you roll one, or you'll always roll 3 dice. You'll roll your path dice, your spell die, which is kind of the general die of your magical prowess. That's a D4 through a D12. And then you'll choose, or then the Crypt Keeper will assign the imposition dice to that roll. The imposition dice is essentially the dice check of other systems, right? It's what you need to overcome, essentially, to be effective. And that imposition dice, also ranging from a D4 through a D12, represents the difficulty, with a D12 being the most difficult of the thing that you're trying to do. And so, for instance, we're talking about hex magic. If I'm trying to cast a fireball type of thing against a group of chupacabra running my way, I would blast them with the fireball. I look at my hex path, and in hex, let's say I have a D8. I pick my D8 dice. We're just starting out the game, so I start as a D6 in my spell die. I pick that up. So I have a D8 and a D6 that I'm trying to roll, and I'll add those numbers together, and I'm trying to get at least a 4 with those 2 dice. And the Crypt Keeper is going to say, well, there are people attacking you from all around. You're kind of distracted. It's in the heat of the moment. It really sounds like the imposition. How imposing is it to do what you're trying to do? I'm going to set it at a D10. So you pick up a D10 and you roll those 3 together. If the D10 is higher than any of the other 2, you compare those 2. The lowest number, the D10 eats it basically. Room, and you'll always be left with 1 die.
Okay.
For your final result of the 3. So you're hoping that final die that's left behind is at least a 4 or better. If those 2 dice, your path and your spell die, are higher than the imposition dice, they get added together for your final result.
Okay, so you don't just subtract the imposition dice. It's a pass or fail for an individual die.
Right. So those 2 dice get compared to that imposition. And if they're higher than the imposition, they go on. If one is lower than the imposition, and if it's, if I roll 2 4s and the imposition's a D6, it only takes away 1 of the 4s. It doesn't take away both. Like I said, you'll always be left with 1 die. So I know it's a weird system in that case, because I know a lot of people, as I was playing it, would add everything up and then minus. I think that's kind of our natural thing. But through playtest, I just found that physicality of taking something like, okay, this cancels that out, and being left with that one result was a very fun thing to do, and created a really sense of drama as you watched all those dice roll. What's everything going to land at? So it was a lot of fun.
It helps you kind of want to keep, since you're rolling the 2 types of dice together, gives you a reason to put like points into both. You're not just
right. And your spell die is your character level. Essentially, your character level ranges from a D4, but you really start the game at a D6. And there's a reason for that we can talk about later. And it goes up to a D12. And your spell die only raises up when you're able to raise all of your paths die level by 1. Once all of them are raised by 1, you get to go up the next level, essentially. Of course, the side of that, with when I talked about the aspects, your aspects have the ability to resist imposition. So when people pick this up, they can look at the character sheet, and your aspects are below the path, and there will be these dots along the aspect line. And the more dots you have in an aspect, the more you can lower the imposition on something. So if we go back to our original example, the Crypt Keeper says, well, this is a D10 imposition. And the character can go, well, I have 3 dots in death magic, 3 resistance dots. So I get to lower that imposition 3 times. So D10, D8, D6. So I'm left with a D4. So I can have more control over how easy and hard things are to me by the more I focus on a given aspect. So it's really nice that way, to have that kind of level of control. But then, of course, there might become a situation like, well, I'm trying to do thing that's outside of my area of focus. I have no way to resist this. Let's go, baby. Let's just roll the dice and see where they land.
Yeah, one thing we were talking about before we got together today was you've had a lot of encouragement from other people in the community to work on this.
Yeah. Specifically, and this is you never heard of this group before. So a shout out to all my beggars. The beggar community, I can't remember their last name. Only know their first name. I'm so sorry, Irene. A local to me here. They work at Gigabytes. So if you're in Atlanta, go to Gigabytes. Essentially, it is a group that is begging you to play anything that's not D&D.
I can get behind that. I know that's kind of some controversial Twitter argument I've seen around, but I can get behind that.
So, and not in a it sounds derogatory. It sounds kind of, I can see how some people may find that rude, but it's just in a sense that please play something else just so you can, I think, deepen your understanding of Dungeons and Dragons and in role playing. And I think it brings your D&D games to a very different level and allows you to experiment more and open up more. I ran a Cypher system game, which is one of my favorite systems, Monte Cook Games. Ran that for about a year, and I started bringing a lot of concepts from that into my D&D games. And just I learned how to make monsters on the fly in D&D, just realizing, why am I building full stat blocks when all I need are these three numbers, the only thing I need when running a monster? Like, why do I need to know every skill or even just three skills? What skill do they need to that's narratively makes sense for the moment, for them to be proficient in, if you will. And so back to the beggar community, I found them through TikTok, specifically Kirby from Disaster Tourism, who you interviewed before, and joined up with that community just really to talk about Cypher System. And then through talking to all of them, just kind of realized, like, man, I've had a game idea kicking around, and a lot of them are developing their own games. I'm like, well, let me sit down and try to flesh this out some more. And this idea stemmed just from, this is my philosophy with game design, is what problem do you see in the current environment? Sorry. What problem do you see in this certain environment that you feel some games aren't addressing that you want to see fixed? And do you have a mechanic that will fix that? Or do you have a system that you think can fix that? And when I looked at a lot of wizarding games, I never really felt like wizard duels had a good give and take. You never really felt like the good counterspelling, like active counterspelling and shooting my spells back kind of at the same time. It's like I can either kind of counterspell as a reaction and then do my thing. Okay, now it's your turn, but never really had that good kind of back and flow. And so that's where this whole thing started from, because the idea was that your spell die, you could actually lower your spell die, your ability to cast spells, to increase your opponent's imposition as you're fighting each other back and forth. So you could make things actively more difficult, but it takes something from you to do that. It takes some of your concentration away. So you're not as powerful, but I can increase your imposition to make it more difficult. And that's what it kind of spun out of. Unfortunately, towards the end of these mechanics, as I'm writing them now, I kind of lost that original goal. But I think what I'm left with, I'm really happy with. So I'm not too upset about it.
No, I mean, when you're starting anything new, it'll always form over time and change, and you may not end up where you think you were on any type of creative project, whether it's a song or a painting or a game system. But
exactly.
I think
I was gonna say, I just let it take me where it took me, and I didn't fight it. And I think that's really, when you're talking about any creative endeavor, just don't fight the creative direction. Yeah. Unless it's going too wild off the tracks, of course, but it's good to explore, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, those first couple steps on any sort of creative project are always the hardest.
Yeah.
So just having any sort of inspiration to get started, I think, is most important. And you don't owe that original idea anything. If you find
No,
something better, just keep going with it. But
no. And I'll say this, and I think I don't know if I wrote this in one of the books. I'm super, if you want to use the word, blessed by something. Some kind of muse hit me because when I started writing these dice mechanics, the lore of this game in my head and everything just spun out from it. I didn't have to sit down and really think about it. It just whole cloth almost dropped in my lap, and it was like, boom, crypt keeper, blah, 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 and just spun. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to fight this one. I'm going to take it. So I'm super excited about that. But what I'm also excited about it is looking at the mechanics. I'm already seeing the potentials for here's a medieval combat one. So the dice system is, I think, solid enough and core enough that I can start just changing out. Well, instead of magical paths, here are my armaments path, blocking, striking, defensives, and those can then mesh back together. So that's what I'm liking about what I'm seeing. That's kind of the future I'm seeing for this system in general is writing, new games or
yeah,
new settings.
I think that's been really hard for me as I've looked into the idea of like what it would take to make my own game system recently is
Mm,
just like balance and statistics. I'm not, does get you thinking about games differently. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah,
so you're rolling a D10, but you need an 8 or 9. So technically, that could be 20% chance, which means you could roll a D5, and
yeah.
then it's
And
so you get caught
I,
up in these math ideas
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. And I'm not a math person, and I've talked to math people about this system in general to see if we could come up with a dice roller to kind of just, well, let me see what the actual math is behind it. But at the end of the day, I think it's the feeling of rolling and the feeling of the success and failure and how it feels more than the bare bones math. I don't think the math is as important as people want it to be. There are people that really want the math to be solid tight. I think math gets you in trouble. Nothing is going to be 100% mathematically perfect.
Yeah.
It might just not feel right. My fiance during playtesting was just like, this feels really hard. It's just like, this just feels really hard. And I was like, well, mathematically, it looks like that. I kind of feel like this is the way it should play out. Because originally it was a 1 through 4 was a failure, and a 5, 6, 7 was, and it's just, I felt really hard. And all I did was shift 1 through 3 is a failure, 4, 5, 6 is a success with consequences, 7+ is a full success, and it felt right. And things flowed, and I was just like, that's all it took. Like, I didn't need a big breakdown of charts. It's just like, well, this doesn't feel right. All right, let's try
Yeah.
it this way.
Well, I mean, different games have different success fail rates too, obviously, and I
Mm-hmm.
think math is more important to something like D&D, where you have so many different classes and races and spells and abilities getting combined together. You need
Yeah.
to keep all that. If you were creating something like that, you need to keep that a lot more in mind
Yeah.
than like something like Paranoia or Blades in the Dark game. Um, some people like hard stuff. Like I love Call of Cthulhu, and that's a game that can spiral out of control and get very grim
Yeah.
very quickly.
Oh yeah. With I played D20 Call of Cthulhu, another Monty Cook, a gift. And when I would run that, I would just tell everybody roll a D10 and add that number to 10, and that's your stats. Like, just down the line if you want to. I don't care how many 20s, how many 18s, how many 7s. It doesn't matter. It At the end of the day, if you see an old one, I don't care what your stats are. Like, and because those were a game that was, obviously looking back on it, D20 is just not the right system for Call of Cthulhu for that reason. But it's what the story needs, right? What does the story need, or what is the story asking the mechanics to do, and are the mechanics delivering on that question? I think it's probably a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
What I would be most interested if people download the game and run it, I'd love to hear blind runs from people that without me there, because that's kind of the next phase. Is just once I go through this next right, just start handing it to people and say, hey, would you mind running this? And then just messaging me and telling me what worked, what didn't make sense. Because it's easy for me to run, obviously, because I've got the world, I've got everything in my head. Me and you could sit down right now and I could, without writing anything, boom, let's go. We have a story. And so that's super easy. But when you hand it to other people who don't have that in their head,
Yeah.
things change.
Awesome. So what's the best way for people to keep up with you and the Crypt Has Opened?
So very simple. They can just go to my itch, which I believe is just jeffreynbaker.itch.io. And that's all my socials, pretty much, is Jeffrey N. Baker. If you don't find me with just Jeffrey N. Baker, add a VO to the end of it for voiceover, and that will probably also pick up. But for the most part, it's just Jeffrey N. Baker. But yeah, if you go to jeffreynbaker.itch.io, that will take you to the landing page. Well, then you'll see the Crypt Has Opened. It's the only game I have up there right now. Click on that and you can download everything. Character sheet is a form fillable PDF. That was one of my things I made sure. I was like, I can't stand a game where I don't have a form fillable PDF.
Yeah, that definitely helps a lot.
Yeah.
I've always been a fan of the print off and then you put it in a plastic sleeve so you can dry erase on it. That's been our go-to forever. But if we're playing online, the fillable is super helpful.
Oh yeah. The digital age, especially playing on things like Roll20 and Foundry, I'm just like, just give me something I can point and click.
That's lazy. That stuff's nice online, but I actually have been trying to limit like tech at the table. I feel like it becomes a distraction if everyone's sitting together. And
yeah, I mean, I haven't been able to play at a table in 2 years or more. So yeah, I'm missing that. I want to get back to a table one day and just get back to here is just a blank dry erase board in front of me and I can draw out the scene. I don't need all the minis necessarily. If you got them, cool. So if people want to play online, I'll shout out this as well. This actually makes sense. There is a virtual tabletop called it's just called Roll, ROLE. And it's just called playroll.com.
Okay.
If you want to go to playroll.com, it is a bare bones virtual tabletop. Very lightweight. It's kind of people talk about it's got some of the best video and audio built right into the browser. And I already have created a the Crypt Has Opened character sheet for Roll. So if you're going to play online, I'll make sure that's somewhere on the itch is the link to get that character sheet for Roll. So you can just pull that up as well. So that may help some people if they want to play virtually. Roll.com, playroll.com.
And I'll make sure all these links we've talked about are down in the show notes for anyone who's listening and interested. You can just do a click. But
cool.
Yeah. Suppose unless there's anything else.
No, I mean, just again, shout out to Kirby and all the other beggars. Thank you all so much for getting me to this place. It's been exciting to have the support, and again, this whole situation's awesome. To be able to talk about it, and it's definitely gone further than I had anticipated when I started writing it. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming on, and I know we talked about it at the beginning, but make sure if you're listening, you check out the trans rights bundle on itch as well.
Absolutely.
There's a bunch of great content in there. I was looking through it. It's almost overwhelming the amount of good stuff in there.
And I mean, for people that are on the fence about indie stuff, Monty Cook Games actually threw in a bunch of their PDFs.
Really?
So yeah. So even if you already have it, they gave you a way to pick up their stuff if you bought it before they added their content. So if you're big into Cypher System, I mean, for $5, I think there's like 4 or 5 PDFs of like dungeons and different modules that they threw in there. So you can't beat it.
Yeah, I was pretty excited more on the indie side, but I think I saw a bunch of like fan-made Morkborg content in
Mhm.
there. Dreampunk is on there. That's a really
Okay.
interesting looking game. You play with cards. It kind
Okay.
of reminds me of like the first edition Changeling, where you're playing different cards with photos on them, and you have to interpret what's on the card
Oh.
to change the dream world around you. So you're playing a
Oh,
card
wow.
and then you look at the picture and like, well, I think this aspect of the picture would do this to the world around us.
Okay, that's super cool.
Yeah, that's
Jeez.
one that I've been following for a while. So, but yeah, what's yeah, it's up to 493 items right now.
Jeez.
So you can have games for the rest of your life.
Oh, I mean, like, yeah, you could spend over a year, play one a day, but good. I mean, good luck.
Yeah.
So cool. Cool.
Cool.
Hey, this is
Well,
awesome.
thanks again.
All right. Well, thank you very much.